Hi, my name is Dustin Wolkis. I'm a graduate student in the Plant Biology and Conservation program here at ASU. I'm also a research assistant at the Desert Botanical Garden, and I'm certified by the American Botanical Council as an herbal information specialist. My co-author, Krista Anderson, is a graduate of the Western Herbalism program at the Southwest Institute of Healing Arts. So as the title implies, we're going to start with some ancient history. So as soon as humans came onto the scene, we have evidence of medicinal plant use. So this is a creation of a burial in Shinadar, which is the cave that the book Clan of the Cave Bar was based on. So through pollen analysis, we know that this Neanderthal was buried with several medicinal herbs, including grape hyacinth, bachelor's buttons, hollyhock, ground seal, yarrow, St. Barnabas thistle, and ephedra. So skipping forward quite a bit, this is a map of what is current day Iraq. This is the ancient Sumer civilization, or the Sumerians, and they brought us our earliest known evidence of writing in the form of cuneiform tablets. And so, as you might expect, there is a cuneiform tablet outlining the use of over 250 medicinal plants. This is another cuneiform tablet outlining beer allocations. Going over to China, we have Emperor Shennong, who wrote the Pen Cao, and he was known not just for medicinal plants, but for agriculture, and he's also credited with the invention of the plow. So now going over to Egypt, we have a very important work, the Ebers Papyrus. This work outlined over 700 medicinal plants and over 800 formulas to use those medicinal plants. Now we're going to skip forward quite a bit to the ancient Greeks. So we'll start with Theophrastus. He was a student of Plato's, and then Plato died, and then he was Aristotle's student, and then eventually he took over the school himself. So he is thought of as the father of botany, and he's wrote several important works, including Historia Plantorum, which outlines a number of medicinal plants. Then we have Dioscorides, and if you've ever ate yams, then you've had one of his namesake plants. He wrote the first Materia Medica, which was a 5-volume encyclopedia of medicinal herbs. And a contemporary of Dioscorides was Pliny the Elder. So he and Dioscorides together represented the whole of herbal knowledge in the West at the time. One of his important works was Historia Naturalis. Unfortunately for Pliny, he was in Pompeii at the time that Mount Vesuvius erupted, which turned him into one of these guys, but he will live immortal in the form of beer. So, skipping the Dark Ages and the Renaissance and the Industrial Revolution and the decline and the rise of herbalism, we're going to skip all the way to today, and I'm just going to give you some quick statistics. So 80% of the global population uses botanical medicine. And of course, that's going to be higher in rural areas and in developing countries. And then 25% of the global prescriptions have been derived from plants. And you have to keep in mind that's despite the recent advances in the chemical techniques and the decline of cost. Going to the US, 38% of adults use some form of botanical medicine, and that's a little bit lower in children. And then 20 years ago, the total sales in the US totaled 5.1 billion with a B. And of course, the US is bringing that average down. So globally, it was estimated to be 60 billion US dollars 20 years ago. In 2011, there were over 100 medicinal plants being used in clinical trials. And in the 2 years between 2005 and 2007, 13 of those drugs were approved by the FDA. So now we're going to switch gears, and I'm going to talk about 3 specific plants. These are widely abundant, both landscaped and in the desert. So we're going to look at Opugia, prickly pear, and Fouqueria splendens, the Ocotillo, and the creosote bush, Gloria tridentata. So starting with Ocotillo, this is in the same genus as the boujum tree, Fouqueria columnare. The Ocotillo can be found in the 3 southern North American deserts, You can find it on rocky slopes, limestone in higher elevations, and granite in the lower elevations. It has a woody stem and succulent leaves and can often be a couple hundred years old. The leaves and bark have this waxy adaptation to the intense desert heat and solar radiation that we get in the deserts. And this will leaf out after rainfall, and then the leaves will senesce, and then it'll rain again, and then it'll leaf out again, and the cycle continues. And in the springtime, you get these bright red, orange, fiery blooms at the tips of the stems. Medicinally, it's a mild expectorant and has a strong topical effect on skin ailments. It's also used to get your lymph moving and has been used to treat hemorrhoids. You can use all parts of the plant. The flowers make a nice tea, although I don't know that it's medicinal. There's really no need to use the root, especially of a plant that can be so old, when you can use the aerial parts. And the best way to prepare this plant is by a fresh alcohol extract of the bark. Alcohol extract is also called a tincture. The next plant is prickly pear. There are many, many species of prickly pear all over the continent. It's widely abundant. It's found pretty much everywhere. The stems are made up of these jointed, flattened segments covered with specific spines called glochids, and they will produce this yellow to orange to red beautiful flower, which eventually matures into the fruits called prickly pears or figs or nopalitos. Medicinally, it's also used for skin ailments, especially sunburns, and has also been used to lower blood sugars in people with diabetes. So you can use the pad or the flower, and the way that you could do that is scrub off the glochids or cut them off, and then fillet the pad. And then externally, you can put those right onto your sunburn. Internally, you could put that into a blender, mix it up, and then ingest the pulp and the juice. Coming to our last plant is the creosote bush, Laurea tridentata. It's also called chaparral in the herbalism trade, greasewood if you're from other parts of the country, and my favorite, the little stinker. And this is the plant that's responsible for the smell of rain in the desert after rainfall. It can be found pretty much ubiquitous in the southern North American deserts, and it reproduces sexually by seed, but also asexually by forming these clonal rings, which can be many thousands of years old. Medicinally, this has been termed the drugstore of the desert. It's used for myriad of ailments and has been used in cancer treatments. You use the leaves, and you can just make a tea out of the leaves. Another good preparation is by making a tincture or alcohol extract internally, and also an oil or a salve to use externally. So I'm just going to leave you with some additional resources, some local schools that you can go to get more information on medicinal plants. It can sometimes be confusing to find information on the web about herbs because it seems like everyone's trying to sell you something. So I've listed some useful websites here, and then some local shops where you can go to purchase these herbs. And then some additional reading for you. And that's it. Thank you.